Hi, EMFCamp took place in August this year in Milton Keynes, and we're just going to run through, it's mainly a set of pictures of what happened, how we built the network, the team involved, the problems that we had. So here we go. So EMFCamp ran from 31st of August to the 2nd of September. It's run by volunteers. It was for geeks, hackers, makers, anybody that wanted to do anything really with technology. You could come along, learn to solder. There was blacksmithing forges. You could do anything. You could do extreme knitting. There was everything was going on. Licensed under temporary events notice, with capacity of 500. Up until about a week before, we were quite worried about the amount of tickets that we sold. And luckily, we sold out, and people were getting turned away on the door after it was featured on the BBC News website.
So we were up. We managed to find a site up near Milton, up in Milton Keynes, actually, right next to the M1, which we'll come on to later. It is, yeah, literally right there. That's also a sewage farm there. But luckily, the wind was kind. It ended up being one of the cheaper sites. So, and one of the good things about it was that it didn't matter if we messed it up too much, which we avoided doing actually.
Yeah. So these are just some of the things that went on at EMFCamp. There were lots of talks.
Looks a bit like in here, actually.
Yeah. There was a high-altitude balloon launch that people were tracking online, which was quite fun. We had an on-site radio station with video streaming. Workshops. Some of these were organised, so most of them are taking place ad hoc. People say, we want to hack on product X or this microcontroller, and they get together and just sit there all night.
Or if you wanted to do something like learn to solder, there was workshops for that, and so forth.
So we had a bit of a strange bar. The bar was underneath the M1. So we got lots of real ale. This is it. It was quite strange because you'd walk up to the M1 motorway to go underneath, and you'd think it would be really noisy. But once you're under there, it was really quiet. That's good. So there's a retro gaming taking place. People with boxes and boxes of different consoles, all playing on them next to Big Pac-Man. And also, what's sort of... okay, so what's normal with sort of hacker events, like DEF CON or CCC Camp, is that everyone gets given a badge, which is a microcontroller. So, one at the back? Oh. Yeah, there's a few there. So these were designed by Charles Yarnold from the London Hackspace. So on the badge, there's a 2.4 gigahertz radio at the bottom. There's an AppMega microcontroller, which you could run sort of Arduino frameworks on. Infrared transmitter and receiver, and it's got micro USB so you can program and charge it. And then on the back it's got a LiPo battery. People were doing all sorts of these. They were tracking each other, and some people were running like a disco framework on there, so the lights on the top could all flash in time with the music.
It is a general purpose microcontroller, so you're kind of encouraged to, you can build extension things and solder things onto that and make it do stuff. It was sponsored by the UCL Institute of Making. Yeah. So we had some requirements for infrastructure, kind of grew out of experience at other events on the continent, to kind of what our attendees had come to expect. Basically, site-wide wireless that works, 100 meg plus connectivity, Ethernet and power to every tent, bring your own cable.
That's not even like the venues, that's people's camping tents as well. So.
Obviously, fully dual stacked to keep Adrian happy. And we need to have a properly run network. And we also decided to do some multicast video as well.
Yeah. So in the months before the event, we got together an infrastructure team. So a few people here today, David Croft and Jasper Wallace as well. And we sort of ran power and internet, really.
We sort of self-organised, really. Some people sort of went, that sounds interesting, I'll get involved. So it wasn't really that big a team for what we accomplished, we think.
Yeah.
We worked pretty hard.
So
so we actually need some address space, and as you know from the networking here, there's public address space. We needed a fair bit because of the number of attendees and wireless and wired and so forth. So we went, Goscom, who are an LIR, sorted us out with an application for a temporary address space. There's a policy for this, which went through, I believe, last year in the RIPE community. We got our AS, our V4 and our V6 space, and then the hostmaster emailed us back, the IPRA emailed us back and said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. You can only have your address space 7 days before the event. the thing is, like, all the equipment's already configured with all those IPs on and packed up in boxes and on its way to the site 7 days before the event. We didn't do any configuration on site because, you know, you guys all install networks. You do stuff in advance. You don't rock up with your router in the data center and go, oh, I better write some config now. Let's write some BGP policy. It doesn't work that way. So we concluded that the policy is broken.
And the Olympics as well.
Oh yeah, and also we had things like the Olympics and change freezes and all this kind of other stuff. So we are going back to the address policy working group to hopefully get that fixed before the next time we hit this problem.
So the strange thing with the policy was we could have the address space 7 days in advance, but we'd only have to hand it back 30 days after. But we quite like the reverse of that.
Yeah, we're quite happy to de-announce it within a day.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I mean, I'm also part of the team doing the network at CCC events in Germany. So fortunately, they have some PI space available, which they use for their own events, and they lent us that. The only problem was geolocation. Your BBC appears with adverts. Your Google is in German. Oh well. I guess some of you have probably seen some UAE Google localization in this room, which we're getting looked at.
So one of the big problems initially was the backhaul. There's no copper or fibre onto the site. It's just a park. There was power, but the power was delivered into a district unit that had the front off and fuses missing and all sorts of things. So did a bit of research and found out about Blue Square Milton Keynes, which is now part of the Pulsant group, and spoke to Brian Ross, and then he put us in touch with Nick Rice from Pulsant, who very kindly organised us a layer 2 circuit from Milton Keynes Pulsant back to Telehouse East. They gave us some rack space to borrow in both sites and said that we could ship our own network up to site. And
also gave us quite a lot of car parking space in there in the Milton Keynes site, as you'll see.
So we were looking at connectivity options. So we got in touch with some wireless providers and trying to say that we want a point-to-point circuit and not we don't just want you to deliver the internet to us was hard. A lot of them, they didn't really understand that we only wanted the kit for a week and that they could have it back at the end of it. We don't want like a £15,000 or £16,000 install bill and a exceptional recurrent. We just want to pay like £4 or £5 grand and get some kit and you guys come and rock up. So we had this site survey done. On the sort of the left-hand side, that's the Pulsant data center, and then the right's the site. Initially, we thought we'd need a higher tower and at the end of the site end because it's lower down. But what we realised with the site survey then, when we're actually on site, was on the left-hand side there's some trees, so we needed it higher at the other end, which was a bit of a shock when we got to site.
So we hired two 30-metre mobile masts. 30 metres is quite tall, actually. Yeah. It's only. I mean, we were kind of sort of impressing on people. Here's a photo. Here's some photos. Then we got it and went, yeah, that is very tall. Yeah, this it's kind of like an 8 to 10 story building. So it wasn't really too expensive to hire. Our problems came a bit later, really.
Yeah, this was delivered and collected by a guy that was also an ice cream man van, which is a bit strange. So over at the Pulsant end, we suffered quite badly with the weather on the first day, just visibility. So Jasper over there, his cycling jacket got cable tied to the top of the mast and hoisted up. So at the Pulsant end, we had a 27-metre cherry picker for access at that end.
It was quite challenging to sort of spot the other end. It's especially if you're not so experienced at that, which we didn't really have any experience. Fortunately, our supplier did.
Yeah.
So we spent a bit of time on that.
But panicky few days with them turning up and us having to quickly go off to BOC to get some helium and stuff. So this is at the other end in the festival site. It's up a 17-metre cherry picker. And before EMF, I was really terrified of heights. And having spent 5 hours sat in that in a Kagul in the rain with binoculars and a microwave engineer, that's gone now.
The weather was atrocious during build-up. It was like the coldest August night on record, and it rained and everything else. But there we go. That's a British summer for you.
So this is a photo that was taken from the cherry picker in Pineham Park, looking towards the data centre. And then sort of in the distance, you can see Jasper's jacket on the top. And this is Frank and Mervyn that were from Rapid Wireless. from who we rented the point-to-point radio kit.
So we had we ended up with 2 links. Being as this was a fairly essential sort of bit of infrastructure, we had the primary link was a Dragon Wave Horizon, around 400 meg full duplex, 18 gig Ofcom licensed, and Rapid Wireless, who specialise in this kind of stuff, installed that for us. We also had a backup link, super cheap, Ubiquiti NanoBridge, 100 meg basically. Link's a bit higher, but it's slightly proprietary 82.11n, but really cheap. We did test it a bit. We never actually needed it, but it was good to have that kind of peace of mind, really. Nowhere near the quality of the Dragon Wave stuff, but still gave us peace of mind.
Yeah, so the Ubiquiti kit could be slightly off at each end, but the Dragon Wave, they line them up with compasses and things, and then on the back of the Dragon Wave unit there's a thumb screw that you can turn, and turning it one full rotation was like 1 degree, and it was really precise, them lining up the Dragon Wave, but it was rock solid.
Ubiquiti just went up there and sort of poked it a bit and looked at the lights and stuff. Yeah, it's about right.
So we spoke to lots of vendors sort of in June and saying, can we borrow some kit, please? So one of them kindly loaned us a whole pile of kit.
This was actually at a contact from UKNOF in York.
Yep.
Thanks, Ignis.
Yeah, so we had a pair of 7206 MPEG2s. We got them in about June, July, configured up, and then we sent one off to Telehouse London, where Jasper and David fitted it in the Paulson space, and the other one at the other end of the Layer 2 link up in Milton Keynes. So this is the network that we built. You can see the Telehouse East in the bottom left-hand corner. LONAP kindly gave us a temporary 1 gig connection to their exchange point, over which we had a trunk with VLAN off to Goscombe for some transit, which was nice of them, peering for V4 multicast, and V4 and V6 peering with the root server. Then up in Paulson, Milton Keynes, there's the other 7206. We had a BGP session, again, sponsored by Paulson up there. And then a small Cisco ME3400 2CS switch, which is like a desktop switch. It's got sort of four ports on it, GigE, does layer 3. It was just there in case we needed to put one out in the car park at the bottom of the mast. So from there, there's a 1 gig and a 100 meg connection onto the wireless over to Pine Park, and we've got the same. There's a 100 gig handoff into two 3750Gs, which we're running in layer 3 mode. So between the ME3400 and the two 3750Gs, we were just running OSPF for V4 and V6, and then BGP between the loopbacks on the 7206s. It was quite critical that we had the option of 2 transit providers, because we didn't want some getting told off or someone moaning on a kind of an incident saying we're going to start filtering you because this person's up to no good. So we had a bit of a independent.
The network was completely open, so anything could really happen, and I think it kind of protects the upstream providers as well as us from each other by having multiple options.
Go on to the next slide. So this is the design that we did, put together in about June, July time for the addressing. So if you want to see more details about stuff, it's all on that URL at the bottom. But one of the things, so initially we did stuff in Visio, and then it's, what format diagramming software should we use? Should we use PowerPoint, or what's the common denominator? And in the end, we just used Google Docs drawing for everything. And it's really neat if you're working some kind of like team that's split across the country. Like I could be dragging a box about, and then Will could be connecting it up and doing the text around it, and it was just easy. There was no versioning problems. It was just all on. Yeah,
it was just that was the up-to-date version. It saved us a lot of time, I think.
Yeah. So this was our state-of-the-art network operations center.
Dates from 1953.
Yeah. So we were in previous events. People had like porter cabins and stuff. But one of the issues with the site is a really low bridge on the entrance, and we couldn't get things like porter cabins in, and they cost money. So I went to a stag do, and my friend had this marquee up in his parents' garden. So I was like, "Oh, can we borrow it?" So we gave a donation to the Scouts, £25, and had that. So this is all the power kit as well. So we also ran the power distribution around the site. Yeah,
we sort of took control of that. We had a 165 kVA generator and a whole load of power distro gear. It was something like 9 tons of gear.
Yeah.
And it actually running the network and the power worked pretty well for us, running them as sort of the same team rather than splitting them off.
So this is a view from the cherry picker looking down. You can see the master of the wireless kit on our NOC sort of fenced off. This was inside, so we had like an area where we did some cooking and people sat around fixing things, a whiteboard, monitoring. Stuff. It was quite dry in there, surprisingly, even though all the holes and stuff in the huge tent.
I mean, we managed to couple the important thing of having a NOC with a fancy display, but also having grass on the floor.
And this is our data center partitioning for our hot and cold aisle.
Some nights it was the cold and the cold aisle.
Yeah. So this is our core rack that David brought along with him. At the bottom there's a whole load of UPSs.
Didn't need them.
No, the power was good. It was there in case. And then we had Nagios, which David again set up monitoring with NagVis. And this is one of the early photos of the screen when we were sort of slowly bringing up links. What was nice that people were out and about crimping cables, bringing up these point-to-point links between the switches, and then back in the NOC you could see it go green on the screen, and that was really cool. And then in reverse, during the takedown, you could slowly see the network sort of collapsing back. This is a bandwidth monitor that we had hanging up that Jasper made. It's got an embed microcontroller in it, and then some Python ran on a box, which S&P queried the routers, and then the graph went up and down in sort of real time. It was like, was it 5 or 6 seconds? Yeah, that was really neat as well. It was quite fun.
We were testing on the last day, sort of get it into red.
Yeah, pulling down those 1 gig files off the Think Broadband website. So one of the points one of the things we wanted to try to do was make building the network really easy for ourselves. So using Google Docs again, we had a spreadsheet which sort of had all our config in. So it had our IP plan, it had our budget in there, it had all our contact details, had all the DHCP scopes, monitoring schedule. It
just grew and grew and grew. Basically, we just added more and more tabs and put more and more documentation in this multi-headed spreadsheet.
Yeah, so we'd end up sort of adding some data in and then thinking, we can now use that data to generate our configs. So using, I used the Python Google Data API and David used the PHP one. We had a whole bunch of scripts that we could just run. So initially, we had a script that went through the IP database, IP listings, and built the forward reverse zones. And then Jasper took it and then added DNSSEC signing to it. But all our DHCP was generated, all of David's Nagios stuff. It built all the rancid configs, and we could also template out the iOS configs for all our switches. All of the stuff from today is all in GitHub as well. So all of the configs for all of our switches, excluding usernames and passwords, all the scripts, all the diagrams and stuff, it's on the address at the bottom. It's just there, so then if I lose all between now and the next one, I can just go there and get it all.
So we had a fairly large site to lay out networking to, and we needed to supply networking to pretty much all of it because we wanted to have fairly ubiquitous wireless coverage. We at previous events have used fibre a lot, but we didn't really want to do that here because it would have increased our costs and needed expertise and stuff. So we decided to keep all the distances between switches short, try and keep them below 90 meters, and we ran a fully meshed routed core. There we go.
Yeah.
So basically every edge device was actually a layer 3 device. So we kind of like the discussion of layer 3 to the top of rack switch, we kind of had layer 3 to the campsite somewhere.
Yeah.
Tent.
Yep. So there were some of the links we drew on here, like this link between Camp D1 and halfway at the end, just below the bar. You're like, oh, that's going to be 100 meters, but we bought a load of cheap CCA copper clad aluminium cable off eBay because it was really dirt cheap. It's like £29 a box. And then there was times when David and Jasper were pulling out their hair because the links just wouldn't come up or they'd be flapping. So I ended up putting extra switches in between and shortening those lengths. And there were some other ones like the link to underneath the bar. That was 100 meters as well. And in the end, we had to bring those links down to 100 meg. But it's only 200 meg to a bar is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would probably get the CCA cable again because it was really cheap. It's like a half to a third of the cost of actual proper copper Cat 5, which was going to actually look at quite a major cost for us, really. Yeah,
and we were quite keen to have 2 links into every switch, whether they were close by or not, really, because what you don't want is someone putting 10 pegs in and you're losing a whole load of camping area and everyone's screaming.
Yeah, it all worked really well in the end. We had a few problems.
Yeah. So the community have been really good to us. in sponsorship, various things. So Fergus arranged the loan of, I think it was 50 or 60 SFPs, which was sent over. So this is the distribution network, sort of in my loft. It was sort of there for June and July, and my power bills were a little bit higher than normal. We GRE tunneled it back to the 7206 in Milton Keynes. So it just meant that everyone in the team could hop onto the VM servers in there. We could get all our Nagios, Rancid, everything up and running, everything monitored, and then we could just pack it up, put it in the trailer. I hope we managed to get it into Milton Keynes in one piece. So
distribution, well, this may look like a toilet tube. It isn't. Strictly not for that purpose. When you're looking around, you want to actually have some kind of waterproof, relatively secure container, and again, we copied this idea from the Germans, and it's called a Datenklo, which is kind of literally means data loo, and it was convenient, easy to hire thing that you could just go to a company and go, hey, we need like 10 of these on site, 20 of these, and we hired them.
Yep.
So many cables in the bottom.
Yeah, so we did our power distribution and Ethernet in here, in the same units.
Yeah, we had some kind of long discussions about which kind of power connector to use and things like that, because people tend to turn up with 13 amp plugs, but you can't have them outside, and lots of toing and froing here. So we wanted to keep those bits of connectivity for end users and power connections inside.
So on the, I don't know if you saw on the previous slide, there's like a notice on the front there, and it said that you text a number with the name of the Datenklos, and that's this bit here. So this is David wrote some scripts that interfaced with AQL, and Adam kindly sponsored us with a number and some credits. So
because obviously you come up, you pitch a tent, and you see, oh, I need a network connection now. Or, it's the first thing you say. Maybe you haven't pitched a tent yet.
People have different priorities there.
Before you pump your airbed up or whatever, so you know, you roll out your cable and you put it there, and then you just text. I mean, AQL provided us with a number to text all the API built and everything like that, and it just alerted us, and off we would send someone to go and find their cables and plug them in for them.
Yeah. One of the things that surprised people was that we had a load of 3750 PSs, which is like 48 port PoE 10100, and then 4 gig SFPs, and people weren't expecting to have PoE in their tent, so they'd sort of arrive with like their Netgear switch, plug it in, and it would be powered over the network.
One guy was really confused. He said, I couldn't work it out for ages. Like, I plugged in my switch and it was on, but I hadn't plugged in the power. Yeah. And so, well, it seems fine. That's what it's for.
Yeah. So in the bottom of the DK, there's a big distribution unit. So that was a 63 amp in, 63 loop out. And this one in particular had, I think it had 16 amp sockets. And then on top, there's these triangular units, which are 16 amp in, and then they had sort of 12, 13 amp sockets, so people would leave their cables cored up, text, we'd turn up, rock up, plug it in.
You can see the switch hiding at the back there.
Yeah. So one chap, I remember someone came back to our knock and said, I plugged someone in, but they had this really strange device he plugged in, and he turned up with Ethernet over power units, and I was like, I'm not sure if we really want them, because there's a load of radio hams and stuff. So I went out to see him, and back at the other end of his Ethernet over power, he had a Raspberry Pi in his tent as like an FTP dump, sharing all sorts of ISOs and stuff. So I said to him, why don't we just put your Raspberry Pi in the DK? So we gave him a plastic tray with a hard disk, and he just left it there for the course of the event.
So we wanted to do some other cool stuff as well. And well, we touched briefly on Multicast, and we thought we'd kind of do this, because maybe the new generation aren't as cynical as the old generation about it. So we set up a peering over LONAP with BBC R&D, thanks Tom.
Yeah.
And we put Multicast on the wired and wireless. We set up a local SAP server, so basically as soon as someone loaded VLC, they would get a list of streams that were available. We wanted to do more with it, but it was kind of easy to set up, so we did it.
Yeah. It was like less than half an hour's work just doing the whole thing. It was just enable IP Multicast on the switch, a bit of PIM, and it was done.
If we'd had to do it during the event, we probably would have never done it, but because we had the network all set up already, it was all done in the build phase, and way before we went on site.
So for the wireless, we had some Cisco WRC4402 wireless LAN controllers. So all the APs around the site, some of them we borrowed a new, but they just came out of the box with a lightweight firmware on. So we had some DHCP options on all the scopes, which point the APs back at these two controllers. So that even though the network was routed, there was a single subnet for the wireless, so you could roam around the site, and the 802.11 traffic was Ethernet over IP tunneled back to these units here, where we'd centrally define the SSIDs. We also set up, is it SpaceFed, Jasper?
Yeah, SpaceFed.
Yeah, so there was a SpaceFed SSID, which is a bit like EduRoam, which was 802.11x that went off and authenticated against some hackerspace proxies. So if people wanted secure wireless, they could use that. Oh, okay, so this is some wireless mapping. So on the first day, we had a few complaints about the wireless not working, and then I realised that we'd gone around and put the wireless access points in some of the toilets, but not actually plugged them into the switches. So I was like, oh, we need to know where all these are. So we used the Cisco WCS software to put them on top of a copy of the site plan, and then we could see the areas where we had bits missing and stuff, and like David would be looking at them and go, oh, there was really poor toilet coverage when I went to the toilet, so then we deploy a wireless access point in a plastic box, Kensington locks onto a fence.
Yeah, because they were so easy to deploy new APs, it was just literally a case of plugging them in and taking a note of the map and putting them on the map. We did that we kept doing it until we ran out, I think.
Yeah. So one of the neat things was just people rocking up at our little tents, and they come around saying, oh, can I come and have a look inside, can I look at the masts and stuff? And one of Benny's friends, Benny did our power, Luke, turned up, and he sat about for a few hours watching and just listening and stuff. And he was like, oh, I really want to do some development. So he was interested in mapping where people were going about on the site. So we gave him a feed of the association data with the AP...
Anonymised, yeah.
Yeah, with the AP name and the time and date and which APs they hit. So I'll give you a demo of that now. I'm not sure how well it will play on this laptop. Locally, it might run faster for you. Ah, yeah. Let's try it. Is it that one? Okay. So here we go. So you can see there's the little dots on top of the map and the time in the bottom corner. So you see it whizzing through the day and people moving between the different access points. So the big blue spot that's Benny's MAC address, who was driving one of our the telehandler around the site. So you see now in the morning people sort of waking up.
Where's the bar?
Yeah, so the bar's at the very top.
No one was in the bar at 8 a.m, it seems.
The bar's right here at the top. So you can now see from about 1 o'clock people sort of making the trek up to the bar.
Yeah. There's got a few people up in the bar now.
So getting to about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on Friday. And I think some of the dots change colour depending on the amount of bandwidth that they were using at the time as well. This is quite cool. So we just gave him a text file and he wrote some JavaScript and web canvas stuff. So you might know the XKCD comic 1110 with the big map that you can drag about recently. So after coming to EMFCamp, Luke ended up writing the JavaScript for that. Yeah, this is getting down to about 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. It went quiet. Yeah, that's quite cool. Yeah. Yeah, so that's online if you want to have a look. You can just go to that URL.
Yeah, we're trying to have everything basically available online. It's all pretty open. The whole organisation is really. Oh, some statistics. We're going to have some graphs. I mean, it's up and to the left would be traditional, but up and to the right. Yeah, there's sort of an aggregate count of connected hosts. So, I mean, we're averaging basically close to I mean, it's difficult to count with day tickets and stuff. We're averaging basically 2 devices per person, cumulative over the time. Obviously, bandwidth graphs and stuff. We didn't really use huge amounts of bandwidth, use like 140 meg peak or something like that. We did use a bit of V6, a bit more than you might have expected, so that was good.
I think because it was sort of the first time that a big event like that was happening in the UK, people weren't expecting to have decent connectivity to their tents. They didn't have sort of things they wanted to start running, like the German events.
Yeah, like people bring servers and like people are kind of expecting it, whereas they came and went, oh, the Wi-Fi works. What, the Wi-Fi still works? What's going on? It's quite kind of shocking. And why is the internet so good here? I was expecting it to be awful and all this stuff. We kept on getting these comments.
Yeah, so here's some of them. We had like 3 or 4 milliseconds round trip time from the field back to the BBC website, which was good. And some nice comments on Twitter that people saying that the internet was better in the field than in London.
So well, what's next? I'm sort of coming to the end here. We're going to be back in 2014 with new EMFCamp then. We are taking a year off next year. Well, I'm not taking a year off because I'm going to OM 2013 in the Netherlands, which is a longer running series of events that are similar. We're going to make it bigger. There was a sort of we certainly felt there was a groundswell of demand, especially once we got the BBC coverage. We actually need your help. We are going to need a new site, which we're looking for. We could probably want to get some fibre in there.
Yep.
Hopefully pull some fibre through some fields and get a good uplink. So we need telcos with Clue who are sort of flexible to working with us on that, and people who have a practical hands and don't mind the sunshine and like doing network engineering outside. I should probably have some information here on how to get involved, but it's early days yet.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Just the one thing that scares me when I see all this is, how is it with rain and water and things and all this electronics?
So I actually designed there's a BS standard for temporary electrical systems, and there's like a tiered set of RCDs, and so basically everywhere is RCD protected, and you basically tier it back into the core, so you assure discrimination with the RCDs. We didn't actually have any RCDs trip or anything throughout the whole event. We had some overload stuff and catering and whatnot, but realistically, I mean, we tried to keep stuff that wasn't supposed to get wet dry, kind of obvious stuff, and I don't think really we had any problems.
Putting it on pallets and stuff in our NOC and stuff, just keeping stuff off the ground just in case, really. Yeah. And all the 13 amp handover to the end user was all the 13 amp handover was inside the DK anyway.
Thanks.
Who came? Who attended?
So can you say that again?
Who came? Who attended?
A few people here, yeah.
And otherwise, where were people coming from?
People were finding out about it on mailing lists, so we had all sorts of people from universities. Or
We had the person from furthest away, I think, was from San Francisco. We basically there were people who like to go to these kind of events and travel around to see them, but we had a lot of newcomers as well. Big say Nottingham Hackspace crowd, lots of families as well. We'd like to see more. Yeah. Quite a few people from Netherlands and so forth that have heard about us. I mean, we really felt like more publicity next time, and we'll get a lot more people from further away probably.
Yeah. Come and help.
Okay, thank you both.
Cool.
Thanks.